This video is going to cover section 13.3, which looks at the regulatory functions of the kidneys, a process referred to as osmoregulation. So the kidneys are involved in the maintenance of the water-salt balance in the blood, which is what we mean by osmoregulation. So in this way, they also maintain blood volume and blood pressure. The excretion of a hypertonic urine, which means that it's more concentrated than blood, it depends on the reabsorption of water. So when we excrete urine, we don't really want we want to minimize the amount of water that's excreted with it, so that we can retain the water in our systems in the body in order to maintain proper blood volume and blood pressure. So this entire process, it requires the following processes: the reabsorption of salt, the establishment of a solute gradient, and water reabsorption. So the kidney is able to do all of these things. So first, look at the reabsorption of salt. The kidneys regulate salt balance by controlling the excretion and reabsorption of various ions, such as sodium. Now, over 99% of sodium that's filtered at the glomerulus is reabsorbed into the blood. 67% is reabsorbed at the proximal convoluted tubule, 25% is reabsorbed by the loop of Henle, and the rest is reabsorbed by the distal convoluted tubule. So two hormones regulate the reabsorption of sodium at the distal convoluted tubule, and those are aldosterone and atrial natriuretic hormone. Aldosterone is a hormone that promotes the reabsorption of sodium. The juxtaglomerular apparatus, it secretes renin, which is an enzyme that leads to the secretion of aldosterone from the renal cortex. So aldosterone then promotes reabsorption of sodium, which leads to ultimately reabsorption of water. Water has to follow the sodium. So that will then increase blood volume and blood pressure. So here you can see sort of again, this is another sort of feedback loop here. So if sodium is low in the blood, then low blood pressure, it causes the kidneys to secrete renin. Renin then leads to the secretion of aldosterone from the adrenal cortex, and aldosterone then causes the kidneys to reabsorb sodium, and water follows along with it. So then you get homeostasis, where the blood pressure returns back to normal. The atrial natriuretic hormone, it's a hormone that promotes the excretion of sodium. So it's secreted actually by the atria of the heart when cardiac muscles are stretched due to increased blood volume. So this inhibits the secretion of renin by the juxtaglomerular apparatus, and the secretion of aldosterone by the adrenal cortex. So this then leads to excretion of sodium, natriuresis, which is followed by water into the urine. It's followed by excretion of water. So that then will lower blood volume and, of course, blood pressure. So here you can see that particular feedback loop. So if blood sodium is high, then high blood pressure causes the heart to secrete ANH, and the ANH causes the kidneys to excrete sodium, and water follows. So then we get a lowering of blood volume and blood pressure back to normal. Now, the establishment of a solute gradient, this is a rather remarkable situation that exists within the kidneys, and it depends upon many different factors. And it's admittedly, it's difficult to follow all of this in one go. So In order to really understand this, you'll probably need to go over this a number of times, um, because there are many factors which go into the establishment of this particular solute gradient the um, within the different parts of the kidneys themselves. So reabsorption of water at the loop of Henle in the collecting duct is due to the establishment of a solute gradient. So if we look at the ascending limb of the loop of Henle, salt is actively transported out of the ascending limb and into the renal medulla. So less salt is available to transport as the fluid moves up the ascending limb, which establishes a solute gradient that increases toward the inner medulla. So you have a higher concentration of solutes toward the inner part of the medulla. So um, lower concentration at the outer part, higher concentration of the inner part. If you keep that in mind, that'll kind of help for you to understand how urine can be concentrated then before it's actually excreted. So urea moves out of the collecting duct, further contributing to the increasing solute concentration at the inner medulla. So because of this solute gradient, water is going to leave the descending limb and the collecting duct and return to the blood. And so this is actually a pretty good diagram showing you the different concentrations and how it increases toward the inner part of the medulla of the kidneys. So further to water reabsorption, then the solute gradient, it results in water reabsorption at the descending limb of the loop of Henle. And and now these characteristics are important for this to take place. The descending limb is actually permeable to water, and water diffuses out of the descending limb and into the blood of the surrounding capillaries. The ascending limb, however, is not permeable to water, and so solutes diffuse out of the ascending limb and into the blood of the surrounding capillaries. Water is not reabsorbed at this part of the loop of Henle. So also with the ascending limb, the upper thick portion of the ascending limb, we have active transport of sodium and passive transport of potassium and chloride out of the ascending loop and into the blood of the surrounding capillaries. No reabsorption of water. And here they are all summarized together. This is actually a very good kind of summary as to how that entire process is set up and is dependent upon um, active transport of ions, and it's also dependent upon uh, what we refer to as semi-permeable membranes, where certain things will actually cross a membrane or a layer of cells, and other things will not. And it's all of these factors together that's going to contribute to that gradient that we see in the medulla of the kidneys. So reabsorption of water and ions, it continues from the loop of Henle to the distal convoluted tubule and ultimately the collecting duct. The reabsorption of water and ions at this point is regulated by the needs of the body. So if the body is dehydrated, the pituitary gland releases antidiuretic hormone. ADH increases the number of aquaporins, which are water channels of the collecting duct, which promotes increased water reabsorption and the more concentrated urine. In the absence of ADH, then obviously the collecting duct is impermeable to water and urine is diluted. Diuretics are chemicals that increase the flow of urine. Alcohol would be one of those, and it acts by inhibiting the secretion of ADH. Caffeine increases the glomerular filtration rate and decreases tubular reabsorption of sodium. Diuretic drugs that lower blood pressure, they act by inhibiting the active transport of sodium at the loop of Henle or the distal convoluted tubule. Diuretics have been abused, unfortunately, for a quick weight loss. The problem with this is that the water is quickly reabsorbed once again, and so it really has no lasting effect. Um, Also used by individuals attempting to pass a urine drug test, which they otherwise would not pass. So the side effects are electrolyte imbalances can result in dehydration, and in severe situations can actually cause death. That brings us to the acid-base balance. The normal pH of blood is 7.4. Proteins, the function of which as cellular enzymes, they work best at this pH. So the body needs to maintain this pH for proper functioning of many different systems. The pH can be changed by the foods we eat and by metabolic processes like CO2 from cellular respiration combines with water to form carbonic acid. Several mechanisms in the body, they help to maintain blood pH as an acid-base buffer systems, respiratory center in the medulla oblongata of the brain, and the kidneys. So with buffer systems, the pH of the blood is maintained because it is buffered. So a buffer is a chemical or combination of chemicals that take up excess hydrogen ions or excess hydroxide ions. The buffers in the blood are carbonic acid and bicarbonate ions. So when the blood is too acidic, um, then excess, which means that excess H plus has been added, um, it will then form it will combine with the bicarbonate ion and form carbonic acid. When the blood is too basic, then the OH ions, the hydroxide ions, will combine with the carbonic acid to produce the bicarbonate ions. So these reactions, they prevent any significant change in the overall pH of the blood. The respiratory center in the medulla, it increases breathing rate if H plus concentration of the blood rises. So increasing your breathing rate, it rids the body of H plus because of the following reaction in the pulmonary capillaries. So when CO2 is exhaled, the reaction shifts to the right and H plus ions are reduced. So that's how it's buffered by the respiratory center. And then with the kidneys can rid the body of a wide range of acidic and basic substances to adjust the pH. They can reabsorb the bicarbonate ions and can excrete H plus as needed to maintain blood pH. Also, ammonia produced in the tubule cells also helps to buffer and remove H plus in urine. So this is a diagram as to how that occurs between the capillaries and the kidney tubules, and with all of these factors, then the urine can be concentrated due to the solute gradient of the medulla of the kidneys, and blood pH is also maintained through these mechanisms, through the buffering systems, largely due to the processes of the kidneys. So we will continue we will look at some of the disorders of the kidneys, and that will end our look at the urinary system.